The city was alive with shadows. Tall buildings stretched into the night sky, their windows flickering like tiny lanterns, and the streets below whispered secrets only the brave dared to hear. Elara walked alone, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor of the quiet cafe where she had spent the afternoon, poring over letters left behind by her late father. Ever since his death, strange threats had reached her, notes slipped under her door, whispers in her office, and eyes that lingered too long in dark corners. She sighed, brushing a strand of her dark hair from her face. She had inherited not just her father's fortune, but also a legacy she did not understand. There were people who wanted what she had, and she knew she could not face them alone. That was why she had hired him, the man who had appeared quietly at her request, offering protection without asking too many questions. Damien. When he arrived at her apartment that first evening, he had looked ordinary enough. Tall, dark-haired, with sharp eyes that seemed to see too much. But there was something in the way he moved, a grace and precision that made him almost dangerous. Yet Elara felt safe in his presence, and that comfort was enough for now. She didn't know his secrets. She didn't know that beneath the calm, polite exterior lay the city's most feared Mafia boss. Their first days together were quiet. Damien shadowed her every move, sometimes almost invisible, other times looming protectively at the edges of her world. He never spoke much, and Elara appreciated that. Words were often unnecessary when someone understood danger as instinctively as he did. But she began noticing small things. How doors seemed to open before she even touched them. How men who lingered too long in her path quickly disappeared after his silent warnings. How he never seemed surprised, never seemed out of control. She tried not to think too much about it. She had work to do, letters to read, and plans to secure her inheritance. Yet curiosity gnawed at her, a quiet whisper at the edge of her mind. One evening, the city seemed quieter than usual. The street lamps cast long shadows, and the wind carried the scent of rain. Elara had stayed late in her office, organizing papers and reviewing accounts. The faint sound of footsteps echoed behind her. She stiffened. "Damien?" she called softly, not turning. "I'm here," he said, voice calm, smooth, a little deeper than she remembered. "Just making sure no one—" She stopped, realizing she had said too much. "No one will bother you," he interrupted, his tone firm yet reassuring. "You're safe with me." She wanted to believe him, and she did, even as a chill ran down her spine. There was something in the way he said it, something that carried both promise and warning. Days passed, and her sense of unease grew. Not from Damien, he was always reliable, but from the eyes that followed her from dark corners, from the sense that someone powerful was always watching. She tried to keep her fear hidden, but one night as she walked home from the cafe, the shadow of 3 men emerged from an alley. Before she could react, Damien was there. They moved almost as one, silent and swift. He positioned himself between her and the men. The attackers froze, eyes widening at the presence of someone they clearly did not understand. Damien did not speak. He did not smile. He simply moved, precise and controlled, and the men, hesitant, terrified, retreated into the darkness without a single sound of struggle. Elara stood frozen, heart pounding, unable to comprehend what had just happened. "Are you okay?" Damien asked gently, placing a hand at the small of her back. She nodded, trying to regain her composure. "Yes, I think so. You don't need to thank me," he said softly. "You just need to stay close." There was a weight in his eyes she did not understand, a mixture of something dark and something protective. It made her both nervous and strangely drawn to him. That night she could not sleep. She stared at the ceiling, thinking about Damien, about the attack, about the fact that she had unknowingly placed herself in the hands of a man who was more dangerous than anyone she had ever known. And yet, the thought of facing the night without him made her shiver. The days that followed were tense. Her office received an anonymous warning. Someone wanted her to leave the city, to hand over her inheritance, to disappear quietly. Damien reviewed the note silently, his face unreadable. He did not speak of it at first, only watched her, protecting her in a way that was both reassuring and unsettling. One evening, he finally broke the silence. "They are not ordinary enemies," he said, his voice low. "They know more than they should. Someone is orchestrating this from the shadows." Elara frowned. "Do you know who?" He shook his head. "Not yet. But I will find out. No one will harm you, not while I am here." The sincerity in his voice made her heart ache with a strange, unfamiliar feeling. She wanted to trust him completely, to believe in him without question. And yet, there was a part of her that feared what she did not know. It was during a city festival that the tension reached its peak. The streets were alive with lanterns and music, a celebration that masked the danger lurking beneath. Elara had insisted on attending despite Damien's warnings. She wanted to feel normal, to reclaim a sense of life that had been stolen by fear. But shadows followed them. As she stepped into the crowded square, a figure lunged toward her. Time slowed. Damien reacted before she could scream, intercepting the attacker with fluid motion that seemed almost unreal. The crowd around them barely noticed, too caught up in music and laughter. But Elara's heart raced. "You can't keep them all away," she whispered. Her voice trembling. "I can try," he replied, almost tenderly. And then, for the first time, she saw something in him she had never noticed before. A flicker of vulnerability behind the controlled exterior. A hint of longing that made her stomach twist. As the festival ended and they walked through the quiet streets, rain beginning to fall, Elara dared to ask the question that had been haunting her. "Who are you, really?" Damien's face softened, but his eyes remained unreadable. He leaned closer, close enough for her to feel the warmth of him through the night air. "You don't even know who I really am," he whispered. Her breath caught. She wanted to pull back, to ask more, to demand the truth. But something in her heart told her to wait, to trust him despite the fear and uncertainty. They walked in silence the rest of the way to her apartment. The rain fell softly, drenching the streets, and the city seemed to hold its breath around them. Inside, she closed the door behind them, leaning against it for a moment, trying to steady herself. She could feel the danger pressing against her world like a storm. And yet, Damien was there, a solid, unyielding presence in the shadows. "You will stay?" she asked quietly. "Always," he replied. That night, as she lay in bed, she could not shake the feeling that her life had changed forever. She had hired a protector, but she had unknowingly invited something much greater into her life, a man of power, a shadow that commanded fear, and a presence that stirred emotions she did not yet understand. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the quiet storm brewing within its heart. And somewhere in the darkness, someone watched, waiting, planning. Elara did not know it yet, but her world was about to tilt on its axis. And the man she had hired to protect her was not just a protector. He was the storm itself. Cliffhanger. The following morning, a small, elegant envelope appeared on her desk, sealed with a symbol she did not recognize. Damien looked at it with a flicker of unease. "They know more than we thought," he murmured. His hand brushed hers as he passed the note, and for the first time, Elara felt the full weight of his power, and the dangerous, magnetic pull it held over her. The city outside was bright with sunlight, but shadows lingered. And she could not help but wonder who was truly controlling her fate, and how far would Damien go to protect her? The sun was just rising over the city, casting gold and orange light across the rooftops. Elara sat by her window, the envelope Damien had handed her the night before still in her hands. The symbol was unfamiliar, etched in black wax, sharp and commanding. She felt a shiver run down her spine as she traced it with her finger. Whoever had sent it knew her, knew Damien, knew more than they should. Damien stood behind her, silent and still. His presence was calm, but it carried the weight of authority, of a man who was used to being obeyed without question. He had not spoken since they had entered her office, but she could feel his tension, subtle yet undeniable. "You shouldn't open it alone," he said finally, his voice low, controlled. "It's dangerous." Ilara lifted her eyes to him, meeting his gaze. There was no threat in his tone, only concern, and yet she could not help the flutter in her chest. She trusted him, even if she did not understand why. "I need to know," she whispered. "I need to understand what's happening." Damien sighed, moving closer. "Very well," he said, reaching out to gently take the envelope from her hands. With careful precision, he broke the wax seal. Inside was a single card, black with silver lettering. The words sent a chill through Ilara. "Your world is not yours alone. Step carefully or you will fall." Damien's eyes darkened. "They are watching, and they are closer than we thought." Ilara swallowed hard. The weight of her reality pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She had thought the threats were distant, faceless shadows. But now they were real, immediate, and deadly. "Who are they?" she asked quietly. He did not answer. Instead, he walked over to the window, scanning the streets below. "It doesn't matter right now," he said. "What matters is that we prepare." The next days were tense. Damien trained her to move cautiously, to notice danger in even the most ordinary places. He taught her to read people's expressions, to anticipate threats, to trust her instincts. It was exhausting, but Ilara began to feel a new strength rising within her. She was no longer just a target. She was someone who could fight, even if she still needed Damien by her side. At the same time, their relationship deepened. In quiet moments, he would talk about things he had rarely shared with anyone, the code he lived by, the loyalty he demanded of his allies, the darkness he had learned to command. Ilara listened, fascinated and afraid, realizing how much power rested in his hands. She wanted to know him fully, and she wanted to trust him completely, though she did not know if she could. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the city lights began to glow, they walked through a deserted square. Damien had promised her that this time, she could walk without fear. But Ilara could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes scanned every shadow. "Damien," she said softly, "you don't have to carry all of this alone." "I can help?" He paused, looking at her. For the first time, his mask faltered, and she saw the man beneath the power, the man who desired something more than control, more than respect. "You don't know what you're asking," he said quietly. "I want to know," she insisted. "I want to be with you, even if it's dangerous. Even if I don't understand everything." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he reached for her hand. The touch was gentle but commanding, and it sent a warmth through her chest that made her forget the threats outside. "Then you must promise me one thing," he whispered. "Trust me completely." "I will," she replied without hesitation, but trust alone could not protect her. One night, just as they were returning from an early dinner, masked figures appeared from the shadows. They moved with precision, surrounding her without warning. Ilara's heart raced. Damien stepped in front of her, eyes flashing with controlled fury. The attackers hesitated, clearly unprepared for the force they faced. Without a word, Damien moved, his motions fluid and terrifyingly exact. The men were thrown back as if caught in a current they could not resist. Ilara watched, wide-eyed, as he dispatched them with silent authority. She had seen glimpses of his skill before, but never so complete, so raw. When the last man had fled, she stepped closer to him, trembling. "You are more than I imagined," she whispered. He turned to her, his dark eyes softening. "I am what I must be to protect you," he said. "And now you must learn what you are." In the days that followed, Damien revealed the truth she had not guessed. He was the city's most feared Mafia boss. The revelation struck her like lightning. She had thought of him as a protector, a quiet shadow in her life. But he was the storm that controlled everything around her. Her first instinct was fear. She had placed her life in the hands of a man whose power could destroy worlds. But as she watched him, she realized that he did not wield it carelessly. He was disciplined, honorable in a way she had never expected, and fiercely protective. "You could leave," he said one night, watching her as she processed the truth. "I will not stop you." Ilara shook her head. "No, I cannot, not now. I want to be here, with you, whatever this is." For the first time, Damien allowed himself to show a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Then you are braver than I imagined," he said. Their bond grew as danger closed in. The enemies that had threatened her from the shadows became bolder, striking at her business, sending cryptic warnings, and trying to manipulate the inheritance she had fought to claim. Each attack forced them to fight together, side by side. In one particularly tense moment, they found themselves cornered in the city's oldest cathedral, a place abandoned for decades. Moonlight poured through broken stained glass, casting colors across the stone floor. Ilara's heart raced as they faced their enemies. "Stay behind me," Damien ordered. "I will not hide," she said, surprising even herself. Together, they moved with quiet precision, using both strategy and courage. Ilara realized she had changed. She was no longer afraid to face danger, no longer content to be just protected. She and Damien became a single force, synchronized in thought and action. When the last attacker fell, silence returned to the cathedral. They stood among the ruins, their breathing heavy, hearts pounding. Damien looked at her, his eyes revealing the vulnerability he rarely showed. "You are stronger than I believed," he said softly. "And you," she replied, "are more than I ever imagined." As the city slept, they left the cathedral together. There was no need for words. Their connection spoke louder than anything could. And yet, beneath the calm, Ilara knew there were still shadows in their world, threats that could return at any moment. Damien stopped near the edge of a rooftop overlooking the city. He turned to her, his hand brushing her cheek with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "I have ruled the darkness for years," he said quietly. "But now I want to rule our world together." Ilara's breath caught. She touched his hand, feeling the warmth and strength, the promise of protection and partnership. "Then we face it together," she said. They stood there, the city lights sparkling beneath them. And for the first time, Ilara felt not fear, but power. Power to face whatever came next. With the man she had once thought was only a protector now by her side as an equal. The next morning brought calm but also new questions. Damien had arranged for her business and inheritance to be secured, but a sense of unease lingered. Someone, somewhere, was still watching. Yet for the first time, Ilara was ready. She was no longer a passive target, but a woman who had learned to wield her courage and trust her instincts. Damien's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, a steady anchor in a turbulent world. "We have survived this," he said. "We will survive whatever comes next." Ilara nodded, a quiet smile touching her lips. "Yes, together." And as the sun rose fully over the city, spilling light into streets that had known only shadow, Ilara realized that her life had changed forever. She had hired a protector, yes, but in truth she had found a partner, a guide, and perhaps even something more. A love built not just on attraction, but on trust, courage, and the shared knowledge of surviving the darkness together. The city was bright, yet the shadows lingered. And she knew, deep in her heart, that whatever danger arose next, they would face it side by side. The storm had passed, but it had left them stronger, united, and ready for the future.